Hey, what's going on YouTube? What's happening, guys? You have tuned into Rules for Rebels. We're going to be talking a little bit of crypto today. Going to be covering a story from TheVerge.com. And the title of this article is Bitcoin Dealer Gets 2-Year Prison Sentence for Unlicensed Cryptocurrency Exchange. Now, when I say Bitcoin dealer, I suppose he was a Bitcoin dealer, but this is some 22-year-old kid who is selling Bitcoins on localbitcoins.com. Those of you guys involved in crypto are probably familiar with local Bitcoins. It's kind of like a Craigslist type setup for people, local. I suppose you can trade with people who aren't local, but where you can kind of sell Bitcoins or buy Bitcoins, with cash, with bank deposits, with PayPal, with Zelle, with other people locally. So, some guy, I'm in Chicago. If I want to sell some Bitcoins to some other guy in Chicago, we can meet up at a Starbucks. I can sell him the Bitcoins, get the cash from him or have him deposit money into, into my Chase Bank or whatever else and sell Bitcoins this way. So I thought this was an interesting story. I thought it was also kind of a cautionary tale to kind of be careful when you're trying to start a side hustle, anything having to do with cryptocurrency or even kind of financial services in general. And it's been a while since we talked about crypto. I thought this was kind of an interesting story, so I figured I'd share it with you guys. Let me know if you guys are interested in crypto content or if you'll pass on the crypto content. Back in 2016, 2017, I kind of let crypto content kind of overtake the channel. I know a lot of you guys are really interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I know a lot of people have no interest in it. So I know a lot of people kind of got turned off a little bit when I was kind of going heavy with the crypto stuff. But let me know if you guys want me to kind of intersperse some crypto commentary, some crypto news in here, or if it's just not something that you're really interested in. I started kind of messing with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies back in late 2012, early 2013. I'd been involved with them for years in, 2016, 2017, with the prices going high and kind of all the excitement in the space and kind of the mass adoption happening. It got really kind of exciting. I got really heavily involved. I was going to a lot of Bitcoin meetups. I actually got kind of all the licensing in place and was looking at potentially opening up a Bitcoin or cryptocurrency related business. I never wound up doing that. But after the prices tanked at the end of 2017, early 2018, I kind of lost interest / stepped away to kind of preserve my mental health. It was kind of funny. I think it was February of 2018. I went down to Mexico with my girlfriend, my parents, my sister, my nephew, and I was kind of depressed. I forget where prices were at that point. Probably somewhere between like 12 and 16,000. Prices had started kind of sliding from the highs. And, looking back, I'm like, shit, man, I wish I would have sold for even 10 grand, seeing as how we slid down to 3. But, when we went from like 20 to 18, I'm like, well, shit, I'm not going to sell at 18. I could have had it at 20. I'll wait for it to come back. And then it went to 16 and then 15 and then 14. And then we saw the eventual slide down to about 3,000. And so when I went on this vacation, I kind of told myself, I said, I'm going to step back. Just kind of not pay attention to prices, kind of enjoy my vacation. And after I got back, things just continued to kind of slide and get worse. And it was kind of a little bit depressing seeing all the money that I kind of, I hate to say lost because it was, kind of house money. But essentially at the end of the day, that is lost money. So it was kind of depressing to me. I kind of stepped out. When prices were kind of in the shitter, most people kind of tuned out to crypto. There wasn't the same kind of excitement and camaraderie around the space that there was in kind of the run up of that 2017 bull market. 2018 was just kind of a depressing / boring year for crypto. So kind of stepped away. We're starting to see prices come back up. You're starting to see kind of some of the excitement come back into the space. I saw Western Union the other day, kind of a legacy financial services business, is starting to experiment with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And there's some kind of exciting developments in the space. So I don't think I'm going to let it kind of take over my life like I did over the past couple of years. But it is something that I'm probably going to start maybe investing a little bit more in, start trading a little bit more, even just with the crypto that I had from years ago, and kind of starting to pay a little bit more attention to the news and things like that. So, I thought this was an interesting story. I also thought it kind of highlights kind of the hypocrisy with our government and our laws and things like that. Big banks like HSBC and Wells Fargo and B of A, these guys get caught money laundering all the time. It's not an oversight. It's not accidental. This comes from the higher levels of their business. There's actually if you guys like Netflix and kind of documentaries and things like that, there's a great Netflix series called Dirty Money. And what the series is, it's kind of each week kind of highlights a different, it's sort of like an American Greed type thing. but each week highlights kind of a different shady, I guess like they say, dirty money. Each week kind of highlights a different kind of theme, and they covered like Martin Shkreli, the farmer bro guy. There was another one about a guy who had a quote unquote predatory payday loan business, and then they had one about money laundering, and it was kind of talked all about like HSBC and how involved they were in money laundering for the Mexican cartels, and in the banks down in Mexico, they even changed the size of the teller windows so that a Samsonite briefcase full of cash could fit through the window. And I mean, this was all intentional, coming from the higher levels of B of A, coming from upper management and things like that. Nobody gets in trouble. Nobody goes to jail. And even in terms of the fines are such a drop in the bucket that it's pretty much worth breaking the law, because the fines are a pittance in terms of all the profits that you make. So, to me, it seems very hypocritical that we allow these big banks to launder money, and then you kind of go after, maybe there's more to the story than I'm seeing, but you go after some kid who I think was just kind of naive, kind of stupid, thought he probably started a little business that wound up becoming much larger and much more successful than he probably ever thought it would. He was making 5% per Bitcoin transaction. Some of the numbers that they throw out don't really make sense. We'll get to reading this article in a second, but they talk about he has to forfeit like $800,000 in profits. But in order in order to have $800,000 in profits from selling Bitcoin at a 5% margin, he would need to sold something like $16 million worth of Bitcoins. And his the numbers that they're throwing out there in terms of, I think they reference hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoins he sold. So how he had $800,000 in profits off of just selling a couple $100,000 in Bitcoins doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but figure we'd cover this. Let's see. A 22-year-old man has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for selling unlicensed Bitcoins. His crime was operating a Bitcoin exchange without registering with the Financial Crimes Enforcement, which is FinCEN, of the U.S. Department of Treasury. Jacob Burrell Campos, a U.S. citizen and Mexico resident, has been held in custody without bail since August of 2018. He pleaded guilty in October of 2018, admitting that he employed no anti-money laundering measures and didn't check up on details about his customers and where their money came from. So in order to kind of legally, and the financial services space is a really difficult space to operate in. Like even large companies like PayPal are constantly running afoul of, state laws with not having the proper license, federal laws. There's a ton of laws in this place. They're constantly changing. They're very kind of vague and up for interpretation. And I remember hearing, I think up until the day of PayPal's IPO, they didn't even have all their licensing in place. So it's a really difficult space to operate in. So it's kind of easy to see how some 22-year-old kid who kind of started this little side hustle, from what I gather, could easily kind of run afoul of these laws. Essentially what they're saying here is, like, for transactions, kind of the same rules that you have to follow on most of the exchanges like Coinbase and these nowadays. They want the exchange, or whoever is selling, in the case of this story, this kid, they want him to follow KYC policies, which is kind of knowing your customers. So if you're going to be dealing with somebody on a regular basis, you should have their ID on file. You should have their social, their address. You should know where their funds are coming from, what the purpose of their buying is. At some levels, you're supposed to know their occupation and do the amounts of currency that they're buying or selling. Do those amounts kind of fall in line? If somebody's a janitor and they're exchanging millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency, well, you might want to dig into it a little bit further. So that's kind of what they're referring to there. Burrell wasn't accused of explicitly committing criminal activities such as stealing or scamming clients, but simply having an unlicensed exchange was enough to earn him 2 years in prison. Burrell advertised his business on localbitcoins.com and often used encrypted apps to text his customers. He sold Bitcoins at 5% above the usual exchange rate and received payments in cash, potentially making his service attractive to money launderers. So, and here's what's really kind of shitty, right? Like and kind of getting back to the hypocrisy of this story, HSBC was like knowingly laundering money for Mexican cartels. They were knowingly engaging in criminal activity. They were knowingly helping these, murderous drug dealing cartels do their business. And here, this kid, he essentially failed to get the proper licenses and follow the proper rules, which, he was in the wrong, no doubt about that. But just in terms of kind of like, I think oftentimes the law lets the true criminal slide and then goes after the low-hanging fruit, or kind of the easy targets. Here you got some dumbass kid who started some side hustle. Like I said, it probably grew beyond what he ever thought it would be. He either didn't know, maybe he did kind of knowingly kind of violate this stuff, but I'm guessing he just didn't even really know about these laws and things like that. And he winds up getting 2 years, even though there's really no allegations of any crime. He wasn't scamming people. He really just kind of failed to kind of follow the red tape or follow the bureaucratic processes here. Burrell claims to have started as a customer of a U.S.-based regulated Bitcoin exchange, but saw his account shut down after a large volume of suspicious transactions raised red flags. And, I've heard from a lot of people through this channel who were doing similar things. They maybe started selling Bitcoin locally to friends and acquaintances and things like that. And they maybe dealt with cash with their friends. And then when they got Bitcoin from people, they would send it over to their Coinbase account, cash it out, get more cash, and then kind of continue doing this. Well, obviously, when these companies have to follow, these money laundering policies and KYC policies. And when they see a lot of money coming in and out of your account and essentially see that they might not know exactly what you're doing, but essentially when patterns start to form, like you're operating a currency exchange or something like that, or a lot of money coming in and out, well, they start to shut down accounts. So it sounds like he got shut down. He then turned to Bitfinex, which is an exchange in Hong Kong that is also being investigated by U.S. authorities, before finally launching his own illegal exchange in 2016. During those years, Burrell exchanged his U.S. cash that he stored in Mexico with an accomplice who dealt in precious metals, and together they imported over $1 million in cash into the U.S. The U.S. Justice Department has ruled that Burrell gave his clients anonymity and privacy. How dare somebody have anonymity and privacy with their financial dealings, right? And this is kind of an interesting debate that's come up in kind of the financial services space, and that's kind of one of the big selling points of Bitcoin, right? Is like people don't want the fucking government in their business. AML, anti-money laundering policies, KYC policies. This stuff doesn't really catch any of the real criminals or money launderers. It just makes law-abiding citizens and small businesses jump through a bunch of hoops. It gets a lot of people in trouble for a bunch of nonsense that's not even crimes. I know for a while, if you do over $10,000 in a currency transaction from Coinbase or whoever else, they have to file what's known as a CTR, or a currency transaction report. And in the grand scheme of things, $10,000 is a really small amount of money. It's not a small amount of money. I'm sure we'd all like to have 10 grand, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things with business and money laundering, $10,000 is like chump change. So I know for years they've been talking about raising the CTR limits to like 30,000 or 50,000, just because it is cumbersome for small businesses to have to file all these reports and then keep them for 5 years and kind of jump through all these hoops. But let's see, the U.S. So, this is just kind of that's part of the reason, or part of the thing that attracts a lot of people to cryptocurrency, is the anonymity and privacy. But here in the USA, that is a crime to have anonymity and privacy regarding your financial transactions. Here is the Justice.Gov document kind of about this story. And I'll link to both of these down in the description box below, but pretty much the same story. Bitcoin dealer sentenced to 2 years in prison without custody, including a sentence. I was trying to see if this is any different. Essentially, this is pretty much the same story. So, maximum of 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. The agencies who investigated this were Homeland Security, the Internal Revenue Service, and Postal Inspection. But, it just kind of shows kind of like how stupid is that you have big banks and big business and real money actually engaging in criminal activity, and nobody goes to jail, nobody gets substantial fines. And then you have some kid here who failed to get the proper licenses, and probably more than likely, at least from the details here, was just kind of ignorant of the laws and rules. And you're going to throw him in jail for 2 years or 5 years. Like, it just doesn't necessarily seem like the punishment kind of fits the crime here. So, for any of you guys thinking about starting some type of Bitcoin side hustle, or even doing something, like playing the arbitrage or playing the margin game, be very, very careful. Things that nobody cared about in years past, or things that the government kind of turned a blind eye to because it was such a Wild West and such a gray area. Now that Bitcoin is, I think there's no doubt about it. Now that Bitcoin is part of the financial services community, now that you do have, banks and exchanges and commodity trading, trading organizations engaged in it. Like, this is something that's going to be heavily regulated. It's going to be something that's monitored, and a lot of the stuff that maybe flew a couple years ago isn't going to fly today. So anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I just thought this was kind of an interesting story. I thought it was maybe a little bit of a cautionary tale, as well as just kind of highlighted some of the hypocrisy with our laws and things like that. So I figured we'd make the video. Again, let me know if do you guys want to see crypto content, or are you kind of over cryptocurrency? Drop a comment down in the comment section below. Let me know. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. That's all I got for you guys today. I'll catch you on the next video. Later, guys.